Chose to give birth with our first VBAC at a birth center.
Gave birth in a birth center with my second child. In my power I quake. My breath, it brought you life. We have toured a birth center. We've looked at an interview with a midwife that works at a birth center. We've kind of learned a little bit about birth centers. This video is gonna be birth stories. Birth stories are my favorite thing to show and talk about. I sent interviews to Liza White and Tiffany Smith here in North Carolina. Liza White is a birth doula. I go to Liza with a lot of questions. She's really helpful. You may have seen Tiffany in some of my other videos. I want to mention that there is a stigma around being plus-sized, pregnant, and giving birth. I want to further address this more in depth in a separate video, but I just want to mention that because it goes along with some of Tiffany's story. If you've heard about her traumatic birth, you can watch that. But she had a very traumatic hospital experience. This is unacceptable. I just want to leave it at that. I can't speak on this because I haven't been through it, but I do want to give others a platform and I want to help them share their experience with you. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Liza, for doing these interviews for me. Let's stay informed and educated on all things birth.
A birth center, it's more a home-like atmosphere. There's not really much in the way of pain relief other than natural methods like breathing, water, counter pressure.
To me, the term birth center means an out-of-hospital birth center where you have your baby with midwives in a environment that is non-medical. You are with medical professionals. There are no medical interventions available as far as epidural, narcotics, IVs. I mean, if an IV is necessary, like for whatever reason, then it's possible.
Because I wanted to have support by women who weren't going to push me or rush me into having another C-section due to the fact that I had had one previously. My birth didn't exactly go to plan. I'd had predominant labor on and off for about a week leading up to our birth. The midwife had told me just to wait until I had my bloody show before I came to the birth center. But by the time that happened, evidently I was very close to having our daughter. So she about ended up coming in the car on our way to the birth center because it's about a 45-minute drive from our house. About halfway there, my water broke. And then about 20 minutes later, when we arrived at the birth center, we ended up giving birth in the exam room because she was crowning already. Right after I ended up having my bloody show, I had been having contractions since about 1 a.m. And we headed to the birth center at about 6:30 the next morning. I labored mostly at home and then in the car on the way to the birth center. I didn't spend but maybe an hour, if that, at the birth center. We ended up having to transfer to the hospital to have my placenta annually extracted. Felt very supported by all the ladies at the birth center. It was never you're too big to give birth to your baby. You've had a C-section, so that's where you're going to end up again. When I actually came in labor, it was right before they had opened, and everyone in the office was attempting to get into the exam room to be with us actually when we gave birth. And Nicole stuck her head in and was like, hey, I need people to help me see patients. We're opening. I would love to give birth at Natural Beginnings, but due to regulations imposed by the state, because the fact that I'm a VBAC mom, I'm not allowed. I'm also not allowed, I wasn't allowed to begin with because of the restriction due to my body mass index. So I don't really have much choice in that. So I decided to stay home. Overall experience with the birth center was that from the time I came in to the end of my care, I wasn't just a number. I wasn't a patient to be rushed through an appointment. They took time to talk to me, answer all my questions, answer all my husband's questions. They included our daughter, who was 2, almost 3 at the time.
I chose the birth center because I had my first child in a hospital with an OB. I wasn't quite ready for home birth, but I knew that I wanted to have a natural childbirth, and I was not confident that I could do that in a hospital with an OB. I just had no confidence in that. Hospital, they have certain policies like no eating, no drinking, an IV as soon as you get there. And in a birth center, they encourage eating, they encourage drinking, they offer labor pools. Hospitals are doing that more, but it's not something that's standard in all of them now. You're encouraged with a birth center to labor at home up until a certain point, and then you come to a birth center. It's a completely different experience. Pain management options at the birth center: there's no epidurals, there's no narcotics, but there is support and techniques, comfort measures. If you have a doula, they can work with you on those. The midwives are also really skilled in pain and comfort techniques. The midwife, the assistants, if you have a doula, they stay with you the whole time. When I was in labor, there is a open line of communication with the midwife on call. My fiance talked to them about my symptoms and how my contractions were going, and they were able to sort of get a good idea when it was time for me to go. Their kind of standard was when you can't walk and talk during your contractions, you're probably close to 5 centimeters. My labor did not go that way, and I'm sure it happens, with a lot of other moms as well. I had some random contractions during the day, and I kind of got frustrated and went to bed. And boom, they just started really strong, one after another. My first thought was, because my first childbirth had been in a hospital, an induction, I got an epidural. So I thought that I was in trouble, that I was going to have a really hard time dealing with the contractions. So I talked with the midwives. They said, come on, we'll meet you there. And turns out I was 8 centimeters. So I was a lot further along than I realized. They immediately filled up the pool for me, and I labored in the pool for a couple hours before the baby was born. I started pushing in the birth pool, and I think the baby was turned sort of sideways, and so that position wasn't working well for me, and I needed a little bit more assistance. It's amazing how much they know about normal childbirth. They had me changing positions, doing different things like sitting on the toilet, laying on the bed, and eventually I was able to have my baby on the bed. That's the thing about the birth center. You can give birth wherever. The floor, The bathroom, the shower, the birth pool can be in any position you need to be in. It just so happened that on my back was the position my body needed to get the baby to come down and out, but it's not required. You can be in whatever position's necessary. There around 10:30, my baby was born around 1 o'clock, and we laid in bed skin to skin for an hour nursing. I got up and took a shower while they weighed the baby and got him dressed, and we put him in his car seat and we went home. And we were home snuggled in bed by about 4 a.m. It was so nice, and it was so normal. There was nothing weird or scary about it. It was one of the best experiences of my life. The difference in how supported I felt was, night and day. My provider didn't change. My nurse didn't change. It was the same two people who opened my car door when we got to the birth center to help me out. And they were the same two people who helped us get in the car with our baby. My prenatal care there was really different too. They were really encouraging. I went over 2 weeks. I was very fearful of another induction, and they were always encouraging and assured me that they have some natural methods that almost always work. Definitely use the birth center again, hands down, no question asked. Overall experience was great. Everything about it was awesome, and that experience is why I decided to become a doula and a childbirth educator myself. I wanted to, it's just not something that women know is an option, and I want to be able to show women that that kind of birth experience is a possibility.
Whether you give birth at a birth center or at a hospital or even at home, make sure the people who are with you on your birth team are supportive. They support your plans and your ideas for your ideal birth and are trained to know if things are going to go wrong or if something happens to go wrong, that they have a plan in place and will do things before it becomes an emergency, or if things don't go as planned, that they can take care of it.
If you are interested in birthing at a birth center, but you feel like it's not normal or giving birth outside of a hospital is dangerous, I just really encourage you to go and visit a birth center.